So we are nearing the end of our Urban Dictionary project. And as a closing gesture, we would like to compare different types of authority that you find in various usage guides and dictionaries across the board, and talk about how Urban Dictionary compares to those, and in which types of situations and for which kinds of audiences different types of authority are most appropriate. Urban Dictionary's model of authority definitely relies on the amount of new data that it generates and collects from its users. For anybody who wants any kind of commentary on modern culture or current events, Urban Dictionary is a place to go to find all kinds of commentary on those issues. It's a database that basically gives minute-by-minute updates on the kinds of language that young people are using
now, currently.
Urban Dictionary's model of authority is one that is heavily user-dependent. In fact, that's part of what makes it an anti-authority. The authority is being placed in your hands. We've come back to this slogan multiple times, define your world. And so, as a site, it gives users the potential to take the place of traditional authority. And that model can definitely be preferable for Urban Dictionary's primary demographic of young white men still living alone with their parents. Whereas Garner's usage guide, on the other hand, has an authority that is very rooted in Garner's own personal identity as an experienced, educated professional.
He has certain advantages for his personal voice. He talks to you as if he is sitting there with you one-on-one and telling you about his own opinions on the way language should be used. Even in the preface, he says specifically that this usage guide is not only to be picked up just for looking up specific entries, but on a more personal level, he allows you to go through it and read it all the way through in one sitting.
His personal judgments, the fact that they are made so explicit, is part of what can make Garner's usage guide an enjoyable reading experience, because an objective authority is not nearly as interesting as something that is supposed to be or is presented as being more objective.
Not only does he act as a teacher in this one-on-one relationship with the reader, but he also invites these educated audiences to debate with him. And this is shown in his 3rd edition preface, where he gives his personal email just for this opportunity.
You can reach me directly at bgarner@lawpros.org. I'm always grateful for thoughtful, well-considered suggestions. So, especially with the thoughtful and well-considered part, he's looking for an educated audience to engage him.
But going back to the issue of his authority, it's definitely on him putting a bunch of personal research and time into creating this usage guide, where even in the preface, he mentions that he spent, I think, 15 years of his time dedicated to formulating his own opinions on how the language should be used.
He asserts himself personally as an authority in this case, which you don't see repeated as a rhetorical strategy too often throughout these usage guides.
As opposed to Garner's use of personal voice, Cambridge acts as a more generally purposed usage guide. They have an encyclopedic tone, which gets rid of the personal one-on-one Garner relationship. Cambridge emphasizes that they use computer databases as one of their tools for their information, whereas Garner is definitely less modern in this case. He has a bibliography full of books referencing his research for the usage guide, whereas Cambridge has more modern forms of research going into their encyclopedic entries.
It relies on more modern research sources, specifically computerized databases, which are presented as being perhaps the most impartial source of data possible. Like, here are some frequency tables of how much certain words and sentence structures are used, and we're just going by the numbers to determine what is acceptable in certain social situations. That makes it, because it relies on computerized data, that kind of relates it back to Urban Dictionary's whole philosophy.
That actually kind of made me think
Yeah.
that we could tie it into Urban Dictionary somehow. The article from Global English Slang definitely uses this computerized database research. They have charts with words most frequently researched and how many times definitions have been created for one word. So it's kind of similar in the way that
Definitely.
they present their stats.
A lot of
for
frequency
Urban
recordings
Dictionary,
in
right.
a lot of ways.
The last sentence of the second paragraph in their preface. The last sentence of the second paragraph in their preface says, "It empowers readers as writers, editors, teachers, students to choose and develop their own style for their particular purposes." I feel like it contributes to what they say their authority is. Instead of saying this is how you must do it, they have more of a secular view on it.
Absolutely. Like, Cambridge definitely takes much more of a global outlook on the standards of English.
Right. It's a more understanding.
Definitely
view.
more accepting of it's definitely more accepting of international varieties of English, and is geared toward a more global and professional audience.
Cambridge presents a different model of authority from Garner in the relevancy to the professional working world in which global concerns are paramount.
What was particularly interesting to us about usage and abusage was how all of the original preserved parts of it were just kind of there. Honestly, reading through this usage guide, it is the one usage guide that reminds me the most of a dictionary, because it's just word after word. Here's the A section, here's the B section, here's the C section. There weren't even very many sections for specific grammatical constructs.
No.
At
And
all.
his personalized voice was barely there.
Yeah, which was
I know she
interesting.
mentions that
in
he
fact,
has one, but
yeah, she mentions that he has a distinctive voice and that he's enjoyable and approachable and valuable.
but compared to Garner, that's just it's not even there.
And that is valuable in a sense because, for one thing, I feel like people are more used to using dictionaries than usage guides. And so to present a usage guide similarly to a dictionary makes it quite a bit more immediately understandable and usable than a lot of other usage guides might be. Like, Garner might just be intimidating. And
Which he is.
yeah. What's interesting, though, about this 1994 edition is just how Janet approaches her task of modernizing this guide. She discusses how she approaches it reverently as possible, because this is a classic document and its tone deserves to be preserved as much as possible. This is one of your phrases. In order to establish her own authority, she piggybacks on his.
I did say that, didn't I?
Yeah, you definitely did. That is Hannah May's verb. I don't really use that as a verb, piggyback.
But now you have.
She emphasizes how much she fundamentally agrees with him on a lot of questions of usage, so by identifying her own opinions with those of an established and respected and very dead scholar at that time,
Yes.
she definitely establishes her own credentials. Basically what we have here is this document that is definitely presented as a tried and true classic. It may be dry, but it is basic reference and it still works, even after all these years. And the way that its authority is made relevant to anybody who's seeking a basic reference is through a very good acknowledgement of how Partridge's intended audience has changed. Yeah, we'd like to thank Michael Adams for his patience.
Let me sit down so I can nod along agreeably with that statement.
Yeah, we would like to thank our professor, Michael Adams, for his patience and his guidance.
Yes.
He has indulged us greatly.
Extraordinarily.
He allowed us to make this video series in place of a 20-page research paper, for which we are deeply grateful. Is this an invitation? Okay. Yes! I've never had French toast with butter.
What?